Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is James Duff Merritt, and I want to welcome you to the K-Sam Speaks podcast. Now, this is a podcast where topics involving law enforcement are discussed while offering real and transparent answers. Now, we are not trying to change the world, but just change one heart at a time. Here's your host, K-Sam.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of the K-Sam Speaks podcast. Joining me in studio, I have my boy, Mr. Allen Cormier from Southwest Louisiana. Very specific, the Lake Charles area, man. What's going on, Allen?
Hey, not too much. Appreciate you having me on today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How y'all doing with that weather, man? Y'all got hurricane season, huh? It's coming close to y'all.
It is. We're experiencing our first little storm right now. Actually, it's probably about 15-mile-an-hour winds outside.
Hey, I always tell people I would prefer hurricanes over these wild tornadoes that just randomly pop up out here in Texas where I'm at. At least hurricane, you could prepare for it and get ready. Other than these tornadoes, just when Mother Nature feel like dropping one on you, it happens.
Yeah, having the ability to prepare for a little bit does decrease some of the stress on it. But like the guys in Galveston, Houston area right now, I know they're facing a lot of rain, so prayers go out to them. And I've already reached out to a couple LEOs that I know and told them if they need help. A couple of years ago, 2020, we got hit by two major hurricanes in less than 3 months. So definitely know the recovery process can be tough, and so we're here for them.
Right. So, Allen, man, you joined me for an episode before where we spoke about your nonprofit, but that was just on audio. So I thought it would be a good time to do it on video so people can see your bright, shiny face, man.
Oh, love it. I have a face for radio.
So, man, I'll give you the floor and let you set your foundation for the viewers now instead of just the listeners of who you are, and then we'll jump into what you and your foundation does.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I'm Allen Cormier. I am a law enforcement officer in Southwest Louisiana with a little over 10 years of experience. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. A couple of years ago, we faced COVID-19 and two major hurricanes all back to back. And through my own little hiccup with anxiety, stress, just a stress-related illness, came to find out how important life, having a balance between work and life is. And through conversations and my own recovery process, we created this organization called With You to help provide first responders with a community where there is no stigma against asking for help or finding help. And, we've been doing this for a little over a year now, and it's been a blessing, and we're growing and affecting people on a daily basis.
Nice. So, give us a little bit about your law enforcement career. What's your current position right now?
I work in our vehicle crimes investigative unit. I've been there since April this year, but I've been a detective for the last 5 years. Worked in corrections investigations, moved to misdemeanor crimes. Then after the hurricane, did contractor fraud. Was involved in that for 2 to 3 years. Went to burglary, property crimes, and now vehicle crimes.
Nice. So, man, let's dive into it. Before we get into why y'all started or you started the nonprofit With You, let's just talk about what drove you to the state that got you to the point that said, like, hey, I need help, I'm struggling. Was it more the job? Was it personal stuff? Or was it a combination of both?
I'm going to say a combination of both. A lot of personal just desire to set myself apart from my peers. Wanted to be a go-to guy, and think once you become that go-to guy, or you show that you're willing to take on extra, your name comes up a lot. You get asked to do a lot, and then it's really hard to say no once you get into that groove, and you feel like you're important. You feel like the job that defines who you are. And next thing you know, you're behind the curve. You're not taking care of yourself mentally or physically. You're chasing event after event, so you don't give me real rest, and that catches up.
Yeah, and that's real important is the recovery and the rest. And with our profession, it's easy to get caught up in that go go go, especially working normal 12-hour 10-hour shifts, whatever you may work, then go and chase that off duty money, and then trying to keep up with family life and stuff like that. Then you lose sight and lose track of your own mental health because you putting all that before your own mental health. So what was your process of reaching out for help and knowing that, hey, I have a problem and I need to speak with someone? Because that's not easy. That's never easy, and that's usually the main struggle is set aside your pride and ego and saying, hey, I need help. I'm still a normal person, but hey, I need help. I'm struggling.
That process was hard. I was probably 4 years behind the curve. Honestly, looking back at it, there was warning signs way sooner than I wanted to give credit for. So I didn't really address anything. But really, when it came down, was I can't define it. I guess the easiest way to kind of put it out there is I think I had a panic attack or an anxiety attack at work. I don't recall getting to work. Nothing felt right. Uh, and kind of going through that, I literally, I was 35, 36, thinking I was having a heart attack at work. Just, I thought it was it. Um, and the worst part about it is I didn't want to ask for help even at that point. I figured,
Mm.
hey, I'm just going to go home, sleep it off, and be okay. So lucky for me, I have a wife who cares deeply about me, and she understands I'm hard headed, and so she allowed me to be hard headed, and then had a really blunt conversation with me, and saying that what I was doing on a day to day was killing me. It wasn't being beneficial to the public. It wasn't being beneficial to my family. And if I wanted to be good, if I wanted to have a long lasting career, that wasn't the way to go about it. So, with her encouragement, I reached out to a primary care doctor, set up an appointment. Then that was the first time in probably 6 years I've ever really thought about seeing a doctor. And then she got me connected with a counselor she knew. And within a couple of days, I was sitting in a counselor's office and taking a hard look at the way I processed information, the way I defined who I was.
Right, right. So, in a couple episodes, I said before that the most heartbreaking thing about law enforcement suicide, or first responder suicide in general, is the fact that we know all the resources. We have access to the resources. We provide the resources and information to average citizens when we deal with these suicidal calls and suicidal threats. So for a subject like yourself, who knew the resources, knows the resources, know how to access the resources, what was your biggest obstacle of that kept you from wanting to ask for help?
Big obstacle would be and still is the culture. It's looked down upon in our where we're the heroes. We're supposed to show up. We're supposed to do it. It's part of our job. Um, it is what we do. We signed up for it. Um, People compare traumas when you bring up your traumas, the way you're feeling. So it was that culture of, you know what, just if you talk to an older guy, hey man, we've done this, we've done this. This is just what it is. I've done it for 30 years. You're going to feel like that. Just move on. And I think uh, you learn to compartmentalize that way. And the cool thing is about that, you kind of can get by day to day, but at some point you're going to run into a situation where that compartment, uh, the walls break down, and now you're left holding all that trauma that you've been sitting through for 10, 15, 20 years, and it's going to affect you. And that's kind of what happened with me. Is it was just, hey, this is just what we do. This is what you deal with. You deal with overdoses, you deal with deaths, you deal with situations that you, no matter how prepared you are, you're going to lose. Um, so just suck it up and keep going. So that was the biggest thing is admitting to myself that I needed help, but also not worrying about getting to the point where it didn't matter what my peers thought about me.
So
That
how
was the
how did
biggest obstacle is just
so how did your peers handle you? Like, were they very supportive, or did you get some people that kind of judged you or thought you were weak minded, or how was that process? Because I think that's the biggest
the
obstacle
peers I
too.
reached out to. It is. I was lucky to be close with a couple guys. We had a close little knit group that we At some point during our career, I was their trainers. They moved on. They trained me in different aspects. So we've had this group of guys that I'm associated with. And when you talk about family, they're the uncles to my kids. That's how close we are. They're around my family. They're because they are family to me. We had some deep conversations about it, and they supported me. And then when I opened up about some of my issues, they opened up about some of their issues. And next thing we know, we're all talking about how we miss signs for each other, and that was real encouraging to me. And so I kind of took that idea of, hey, you got to be the hero. You got to show up and do the job no matter what. Kind of took that on to the idea of officer wellness, mental health, where I was like, well, look, somebody's got to talk about it. Somebody's got to bring it forward. I'll do it. And it took me a couple of years to get to that point. I was in counseling probably 2 years before I even admitted to just having a conversation about it. It was a need to know, in my opinion, because I was trying to get myself squared away and I didn't want extra eyes on me. But once I started talking publicly about it with my peers, the support has been great. It's been fabulous to see. I've had old hats come up and say, hey, I wish there was somebody like you that would have just spoke that truth to me 20 years ago. Maybe I wouldn't be going on my second marriage. I've had guys saying, hey, look, we struggled with that, and I'd love to get involved with you to help the younger generation to be prepared. So it's been pretty awesome, man. We know there's a lot more to life than just our job. And so we deal with the stuff that happens at home too. One of the things, you brought up peer support and EAP, and a lot of that stuff is a lot of guys have this mentality that it's only work related incidences. And so we kind of balance that where we know EAP is important. We know peer support is important for things that happen at the job, but we're also here to help with that aspect of the home life where people think it's off limits. We grew up in a generation where home stays at home, work stays at work, but any first responder will tell you that work goes home. It doesn't matter if it's a great day or a bad day. Your pager, your mentality, it goes home with you. And we try to compartmentalize that, but we fell at it. We're human. We're going to bring who we are home. And the next thing you know, we're defining ourselves. And so now our home life is based around what we do for a living. And then you have some bad things that happen at home, or you're going through some rough patches, financial struggles, and then you turn around and you go to work, and that's affecting you there too. And there's this concept that, hey, both had to be split from each other. But when I look at a person, you get both. You get their home and personal life. You get who they are today and their traumas from yesterday. And I think we're having a lot more conversations about officer wellness in terms of the whole person, instead of just, hey, you were involved in this traumatic incident, or you dealt with this. How are you doing? This is hey, this is what's going on.
Yeah, and the cool thing about
home life.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The cool thing about those conversations is that you find out that more than likely we all struggling with the same thing in some form or fashion. But nobody wants to talk about it because, like you said, the culture and the stigma back then is like it makes you weak. Or some people worried about. I know in the first episode that we spoke, you said one of your biggest things was that you're worried about losing your career, losing your gun and your badge, because you spoke up and said, hey, I'm struggling mentally. Not saying I'm like mentally crazy, but like I'm having struggles and I need help. I'm calling out, reaching out for help. But one of your main concerns was, don't take away my gun or my badge, because like you said, you want to be that guy and you based everything around your career and your profession.
Yep. Yeah, and that's our identity. We learned to become those people. That's what we signed up to do, and that's that costume we put on when we go to work. We have to be infallible. We have to be perfect, and then you kind of learn to just be that in itself. And so, when it comes down to it, you don't want to lose it, but you're going to lose yourself to that. And there's far greater consequences than not being a first responder when it comes down to your family and who you are as an individual. Because if you're not strong in who you are, it's going to affect the way you deal with the community. And that's the last thing we want to do, is have that first responder who is not capable of being the best on the job.
Yeah, you just mentioned something too that just struck something. The pressure that today's culture, media, social media places on us first responders, and more so law enforcement, honestly, truth be told, to be that perfect individual, to be that perfect officer, not to make any mistakes. Like it's like now we have to be perfect in everything we do. We don't have no room for error because we are yet supposed to be professionals. We're supposed to be highly trained to where every situation we handle has to be perfect. So now what you have is some officers second guessing what they're supposed to do in situations, which now is ultimately costing them their life in some circumstances, or placing other people in greater danger than what it should have been if we didn't have the pressure from society. So with all this pressure now of to be the perfect officer, to having to worry about, man, if I make this decision, will this land me in prison? Or will I go viral on YouTube or social media? So how does stuff like that affect officers' mental health?
Uh, it does. I can't really tell you how, because I think each individual person has to battle with that. But uh, as a job and as a culture, it's keeping people out of the job. It's the reason people want to walk away from the job. You can literally do the right thing legally in our profession and still be chastised through social media, and you can't even speak up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Ongoing investigation, you can't give your side of the story. Everybody will talk about it, except you can't present your side of it. uh, and I don't think people want to live in a culture that does that in that aspect. From a profession, if you're going to be judged no matter what, whether you did the right thing or not, you're still going to suffer consequences on the back end. It's really hard to get people to come into a career field or a lifestyle where it can follow you home. Your children become targets of that. Your family, if you're not perfect, and it's going to be used against you. And uh, it's a rough point right now, and I think that it's going to swing back the opposite way. And I see little of it in certain communities where they are taking care of their first responders. On that, you see a lot more information coming out after incidences. But 10, 15 years ago, something could happen at work, and it would take sometimes a week to come out publicly, because by the time you get all the documentation requests or all of that. And now with video cameras readily available, we all have body cams. The outcry for instant information only gives you a partial truth and a partial perspective of what's being seen. So you as a profession, we're being judged right away without any real context of the whole picture, and you're only getting this little slice of the incident. So it makes people nervous, and they do second guess themselves, or they'll play it slower to give themselves time to think of other negative outcomes, and to have a scenario where they can counter that before they move forward. And some situations that's not going to play out great for the victims, for society, or for the first responder. And it's tough to see, but we're having those conversations, and that's what's really important. We don't have the answer right now to it, but having those conversations is gonna create a better future for our first responders.
So transitioning into your nonprofit, which is called With You, how did y'all come up with that name?
Uh, well, I didn't. That's the best part about it. I had a great idea, and it got shot down quick, fast, in a hurry. So I love my guys for that. The idea of With You is the name came up from we don't attack problems alone. There's very few calls you're going to do something by yourself, and you're always going to have a backup en route. Certain calls are automatically going to be a 2-man call, or even maybe 3 or 4. You're not going to run into a building by yourself, except if it's an active shooter situation. But even then, you're passing information, and somebody's coming to help you. So that's kind of the idea with you is we're here to be with the individual first responder. We're going to be your backup. We'll walk you through it. We'll share our experiences. We'll share our resources. Most of us have been there. We're mostly our board is mostly made up of first responders. We're first responder heavy on the volunteer side, and we have volunteers who are mental health professionals and all that. But you have a group of individuals who can talk about what they've seen on the job and experience themselves, and I think that opens up that trust and that family atmosphere where we can have a real conversation about how we really felt and really process some of those emotions and thoughts that we had during our situations that we dealt with.
So tell us, I remember from the last interview, you said the board is comprised of some of y'all wives and officers and stuff like that. How has that been coming along? I know when we spoke the first time, it was kind of still in the beginning phases, but you shared a 90-second video with me that you was on the news. So it seems like y'all getting out there in the community and getting yourself out there. How's that coming along?
Yeah, our board is comprised of first responders and two spouses of first responders. One's a mental health advocate, and the other's a physical therapist. So they're there for for the professional reasons of what they have. But our volunteer group has grown tremendously, and we're looking at expanding some of these volunteers into bigger roles. And the best part is a lot of them aren't first responders. That was one of the big things we had to get over, was not every first responder is able to do every job, right? Um, and so we started having some conversations with community members, and they wanted to step up and help. They wanted to help first responders. They loved the idea of the mission and our goal. And so they volunteered their time, and um, we're growing in that way. And I look forward to seeing what opportunities they bring forward, because our society is not as negative as we see. First responders see a very negative side of society, but there is an amazing side to our communities, and we just need to lean into them and build rapport with those individuals and not focus on the negative side that we see day to day.
Yeah. So how what kind of services do y'all offer as a nonprofit? Is it just for first responders, or can first responders like family, spouses tap into the services with them?
We focus mainly on the first responder. That is our goal, is to affect the first responder. But we also understand there is collateral between family members. So sometimes you got to step out. That's a case by case situation. We look at it more as a peer support aspect of what we do, but the family's involved in that too. The families carry those traumas too. They know mom and dad have to leave for work. They may not come back. So there's some things that we're trying to work on, building that network of community for peers or spouses to be able to communicate, kids to be involved with each other. So there's a way for them to feel that anxiety or stress of dad or mom leaving every day is not shared just by themselves, and they can work through these processes with their peers also. But yeah, we mainly focus on the first responder, but like I said, we know the family's part of it, and that's if you're good at home and you're good in the community, you're going to be a good first responder. So you can't just take part of who they are and just address that issue. You have to address them as a whole, and their family's part of it.
Good, that's good. So, and normally on my episodes, I always give the data on first responder suicides. And with what we seeing is that number is steadily increasing. So as an organization like what y'all have, what are y'all doing to try to combat that problem of first responder suicide?
Honest conversation. That is our biggest aspect. Is just having honest conversations. Um, we ask our peers what's really going on. It's not the casual, hey man, what's going on? Like, when you see something, say something. And I know that's the mentality we hear. TSA did that about things at airports, but we know our peers, and we see them day in and day out. We see them for 8, 10, 12 hours, maybe 48 hours in a row, depending on what's going on the job. And we know when something's up because we read people all day, every day. Why does that stop with our peers? And so we encourage our guys to ask those tough questions. And if you get a BS answer, follow up with a good question. We're in my line of work. We're LEOs. We ask questions all day. We are building cases all day. We wouldn't take a misdirected answer on a traffic stop or during an investigation. We're going to follow up and dig a little bit deeper. But when it comes to our peers, we're really great at just being nonchalant about it. And that's what we really focus on, is when we read our peers and we start seeing things going on, we ask questions, good and bad. We want to celebrate the good things. If you got good stuff going on in your life, celebrate that. If you're struggling with something, we want to know too, because we want to be there to help you through it, because more hands make work easy. And that's our big push, is when you start asking people about how they're really doing and really show you care, you find out that we're not getting to that crisis moment, that crisis, when it comes down to the suicidal moment, most first responders have made their mind up and nothing's really going to stop them.
Yeah.
But if we can stop that process from even beginning, that's our goal. It's that prevention. And suicide, I've had a lot of conversations just this week about first responder suicide, and I think the numbers that we see uh, aren't really honest numbers. We work in an environment where risky behavior occurs more often than we really want to admit. You may not be suicidal in the sense of I'm going to go out, park my unit up, pull my weapon out, and then shoot myself. It could be, hey, I'm not waiting for backup. I'm going to approach this door in a non-tactical manner. I'm going to rush this situation. I'm going to drive a little bit faster. I'm going to be a little riskier. And you know what? If something happens, it happens. Well, that's not a suicide. That's a part of the job. And so I think our numbers, we have to be very careful when we talk about our numbers, is that it's not just the number of suicides we know. That's literally just the ones that have been reported as suicides, and it doesn't include the risky behaviors. It doesn't include the fast driving, the running into situations where we know we probably could be a little bit more tactical and a little bit smart about what we're doing. And we all know risk is part of the job, but we all know, and we've all seen guys on the job do something risky because they just didn't care about the result. And those are the guys we got to take care of.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because when we first connected, we had somebody in common with Michael Sugaru, that you read his book. I'd done a couple episodes with him telling his story, and that was one of the main things that shocked me from his story, was that he was like, yeah, I was to the point of suicide, but I wasn't to the point to where I would do it to myself. I would go out and shoot myself. So what he was doing was, thinking about taking that step back into traffic on a traffic stop, and oops, he got hit by a car, or going into a situation less tactical, to put himself in a greater danger, or walking up right to the door for domestic and knocking on the door and hoping that that'll be the day that he will get shot through the door. So it's all these little things that goes through people's minds. And honestly, he was honest. He was like, it was more so just to make sure that my family is taken care of, because it happened in the line of duty.
Yeah, you're a hero.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah, you'll be praised for that. You become a plaque on the wall, and you'll have a legacy for that. Nobody really talks about setting a legacy of leaving the next generation better off in terms about actually asking the hard questions and dealing with the hard problems. And right now, it's mental health and officer wellness.
Yeah. As a department, we're going to start wrapping this up here shortly. As a department, what is your department doing for first responders? Because I'm sure you are pretty vocal in your department with your organization and what y'all doing. But as a department and as a city, what are they doing, or if they're doing anything to help with officers' mental health besides peer support?
We're having good conversations. We have EAP peer support, but I think the culture is, and I don't want to say it's the departments. I think it's the individuals in the department itself. I think regionally, we just had an article go out about another department where they had an officer injured, and one of the statements in the article from the insurance company, I believe, was, "Hey, we've met our obligation." And we've had a lot of conversation about that. Yeah. And here locally, we've had a lot of how is that even a good statement? But when you think about it, that is all they have to do. And so I think as individuals, not even as a department, I think as individuals, you're seeing a lot more individuals step up and handle up and help their peers on that actual personal level. I think the departments can only do so much. I think they can only financially afford to do so much. They're taxpayer funded. So you can't go out and say, hey, we're going to ask for more money to provide additional mental health support, because that's taxpayers you're placing that burden on. So it's a fine line. I think departments have to, and I think they're doing a very good job on encouraging, and I think they're also doing a great job allowing their employees to speak up and take care of each other. And I think that's where that big culture shift is going to happen. It's going to be where the community gets involved and sees the need and allows extra funds to be spent in those areas, because they see how much it's needed and how big of an effect it can have on the services they receive. I think it's really hard to ask a department to address 900 or 1,000 employees on an individual level, because that opens up a lot of, well, you did it for one but not for all. And I think that's a rough place for some departments to be in, because you just don't have the resources for it. But the best part is that they're encouraging us to have these conversations and allowing us to have these conversations without being chastised about them. So I think that's the biggest issue we're seeing right now. Is not, I shouldn't say issue. The biggest support is departments allowing these conversations to happen and supporting those employees who are having them.
Nice. So, man, Allen, I appreciate you for your time on this day. I'm gonna give you the floor one last time to allow, how can first responders or even people in the community from across the world, wherever they may be viewing this, how can they find out more information about with you and possibly get involved and tap into your services as first responders?
We have a website. You can find us online at www.withuswla.org. If you want to donate, get involved, there's a contact tab. There's a donation tab there. We're going to be putting some events out hopefully soon, putting out some media that we've been doing on the website. But we're also on Facebook at With You. That's pretty much our primary way of being contacted is through our website and through Facebook. Where all of our board members have access to that. So as soon as something comes in, we're able to act, and we get the right people in contact with the right people, and work on building a rapport and making a difference.
Outstanding. Well, Allen, man, thank you again. But ladies and gentlemen, that is all for this episode. But before we go, as always, I'll leave y'all with my words of encouragement. Today's word is: compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. That is it for this episode. Thank y'all for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next time.